Hello, everyone. Welcome to our joint webinar with AXELOS on ITIL Practitioner. Before I continue, I would like to make sure that you're able to hear us and see our slides. So please make use of the poll function on your screen to let us know if we can continue. Okay, perfect. All right. So once again, welcome to this webinar titled Ace Your ITIL Practitioner Sales Conversation. So obviously setting up the expectation is meant to be a sales and marketing enablement session on ITIL Practitioner. My name is Connie Tai. I'm from the marketing team at ITpreneurs. I will be your host and moderator of today. For your information, this session is being recorded, so we will be sharing the recording and the slides with all the participants. During this live broadcast, you can submit your question using the chat box, and we'll cover as many of your questions as possible during the Q&A discussions at the end of the webinar. And many of you actually have been very cooperative. It's wonderful that you already submit some of the questions that you have when you register for the webinar. We have shared that with Tom, so we'll also go through that as much as possible at the end of the session. For the audience who are not very familiar with ITpreneurs, let me take a short moment to highlight how we can help you accelerate your training business. ITpreneurs offers a one-stop shop for training providers to access a wide portfolio of training materials and value-added services. We feature thousands of titles in our courseware library. Some are well-established IT certifications, obviously ITIL, Prince2, emerging frameworks, including cloud computing, big data, and DevOps, some niche offerings, and some non-accreditation workshop materials. They're available in multiple delivery formats, including classroom and e-learning and simulations, as well as in multiple languages. So by working with us, utilizing our comprehensive courseware library, meaning that you can broaden and deepen your training portfolio while reduce the overall cost of training content development and maintenance. And we bring you end-to-end services in the whole IT training value chain. With our customer solutions team and our global service desk, we are here to assist you so you can enjoy convenience with anytime, anywhere ordering, exam services, and all kinds of supports that we offer. So much for that. So we continue to with some poll questions now, because we want to find out for the benefit of the speaker who has joined us today. So the first poll question is, we would like to know a bit about your organization. So please let us know if you are offering primarily training or consulting, or you offer a mix of both. So the answers are coming in, and we can share the results with you. So half of you offer a mix of training and consulting, and a third of you are primarily a training company. And some of you are primarily consulting, and a couple of you are independent instructor. Thank you very much. So the next poll question is, what's your role in your organization? So that is also quite important for today's session. As we mentioned at the beginning, we are primarily focusing on the sales and marketing side. So thank you for answering the poll. And just give one more second before we share the results. Okay. So, interesting. Half of you are a trainer, and 1/3 of you are in sales, and also about 1/3 in consulting. And there are also some marketing folks there too. Great, thank you. I guess, well, you also have multiple roles. That's why we have this results. Okay, so are you familiar with ITIL? I think that's a very interesting question. Okay, then we can share the results. What do you think? See, wow, 86% of you already offer ITIL training. So only a small number of you have heard about it and want to know more. All right, and I think we have the last question. Will you be adding ITIL Practitioner to your portfolio when it is launched? Tick tock, tick tock. Okay, we can close the poll. And 74% right away. 50. All right. Okay, so today's speaker is Lynam, marketing lead at AXELOS. Maybe Tom, you can tell us in AXELOS.
Sure. Thank you, Connie. I hope everyone can hear me okay. As Connie said, I'm the Global Marketing Lead for ITIL at AXELOS, which I think in short, and probably easiest to say, is that I'm responsible for any marketing activities which come from AXELOS, so focused quite heavily on new product launches, working with our partners like ITpreneurs, and also looking at promoting content to our community as well at AXELOS. So I wanted to start just by covering what I'm going to go through today. So I'm going to start off by covering a little bit, very briefly, around why we decided to develop ITIL Practitioner, and this was something we talked a lot about when we announced it. So if you did see those announcements, I don't want to go over too much ground which has already been covered, but at the same time I think it's important to share with you why we developed it, and it's also important, or an important sales message which you can use to your customers. I'm then also going to cover how it fits into the existing portfolio, and also what's actually in ITIL Practitioner, what makes up the new qualification. I'm going to talk a little bit around target audiences as well, the value prop and benefits for those different audiences. And then I'm going to finish up by sharing a little bit of information around some of the content that will be, or the sales and marketing content that will be available in the next couple of weeks, and also what AXELOS is doing from a marketing perspective. So some of the events that we'll be attending, some of the activities we've got running. So you know, if you are at any of those events, for example, you can pop in and say hello. One thing before I do move on, I just want to say that the slides, or the majority of the slides that I'm showing you today, will make up a part of the toolkit, the sales toolkit that AXELOS is putting together. My one caveat to that is that this is a work in progress, so some of these slides might change slightly from what you receive later down the line, but just wanted to sort of say, if there's anything which you think slightly off, do let me know via the chat box, because this is very much a work in progress still. And I'm hoping as well during today's session to cover off a lot of the questions that you very kindly sent in before the session today. And if I haven't, then do send them in through the chat box, please, or we'll try and get to them at the end of the session. Okay, great. So I think the first sort of thing to tick off really is when is ITIL Practitioner launching? When will that first course run? So we are planned for a February 2016 launch, and what I mean by that is that the first public courses will be available to be run by February 2016. I wanted also to pick out here on this slide that we're talking about that is an evolution to the ITIL best practice framework. And what we mean by this, and hopefully you'll get a sense of during today's session, is that it is completely additive to the existing framework. It's complementary, it's an evolution. We're not ripping up roots, and that's actually one of the main bits of feedback we got, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, as that organisations are gain today a lot of value from the ITIL framework as it is. So we didn't want to start fixing what isn't broken. Okay, so wanted to, as you probably noticed, this is one of the work in progress slides. It is quite a difficult thing to depict and something that we're working to refine to make as obvious as possible, and it is very important in terms of how Practitioner fits into the wider ecosystem. But before I go into detail on this diagram, I just wanted to share with you some of the how we got to ITIL Practitioner. Why was it being developed? And in 2014, it really started with a lot of consultation, and this was from conversations with the wider IT service management community, our partner network. We attended an awful lot of events in 2014. I think it was around 50 to 60 different industry events to speak to people, listen to presentations, find out what good practices were taking place in the industry. And actually, in 2014, we also commissioned a report, The Importance of ITIL, which is available on our website. And some of the key messages within that were very much that ITIL isn't broken. It's a sort of evolution, and it works and complements a lot of the new methodologies and frameworks that exist in the market today. But what we did identify, and where we felt that AXELOS as an organisation could add value to this existing framework, was around offering something with more practical guidance. And while obviously the existing modules that exist are very valuable, that actually not a huge number of people go on from foundation to an intermediate module. We sort of estimate that it's somewhere between 10 to 15% of candidates go on. And so that means that a huge number of people working within IT service management only take ITIL Foundation and don't go on. And ITIL Foundation is very much focused on, as you know, all of you who are already selling ITIL training, it focuses on the what and the why. It goes through all the processes, all the life cycle stages, what each process is, why it exists, and it also gives a candidate the language of IT service management. So when they go back into the business, they know the difference between an incident and a problem. They know what change management is, but they have very little. They don't know where to start in terms of actually applying that knowledge in the workplace. So we identified this sort of clear opportunity to add this value, but we did feel that whatever we developed needed to be aligned to the needs of the IT service management community. And again, this is actually another one of those sort of selling points of Practitioner, is that it's been developed with extensive consultation with the community. We've run a number of surveys, one of which I'll show you some of the results on the next slide. But just looking through some of the feedback and the comments we got about Practitioner when we announced it, you know, lots of words such as how to, relevance, problem solving, and actually a lot of people were just saying finally or at last. So it was good for us to hear as a validation, but it's I think for you and as a takeaway for today's session is that there is a clear demand for that, and I hope you're seeing that demand, and I'm assuming a lot of you are, with the response that you will be taking ITIL Practitioner on, which is great news for myself and AXELOS and our partners, ITpreneurs, and something we can take a lot of encouragement from. So I mentioned the survey, and I just want to share you some of the results from that. And please do feel free to use some of these statistics in your own marketing and sales efforts. But we ran a survey back in July. I hope some of you may have seen it. So this was some of the results from the end user one, which was asking around the perceived value of ITIL practitioners, i.e. a practical certification focused on ITIL. So just to give you a little bit of context, so this was taken from a total of 720. We had a range of different sectors, people from consulting, professional services, government, finance and banking, telecoms, higher education, were all very well represented. And we also had a wide range of roles. So we saw project managers, and as you on some of the stronger ITIL markets, the likes of the United States, Canada, and actually we received responses from over 80 different, very encouraging. But what you can see on the slide now is these are just two quite a complex series of questions, but asking people to say what they thought the perceived value of ITIL practitioner was against other related certifications. And what I found quite interesting was actually that 38% of people said that ITIL practitioner was the same value as an intermediate module. So I've actually, in the survey, we broke out the life cycle stages and the capability modules. I've compressed them for this slide. But 38% said that they saw the same value as saw ITIL practitioner as the same value as an intermediate module, and actually 25% felt that it was of greater value than an intermediate module, which I think sort of some of the again, it validates the gap, shows that there's this demand for the practical element for ITIL, and very encouraging. And just something which is of interest for you as well, only 10% of respondents said they were not interested in taking ITIL practitioner. So just to break that down, over 50% said yes, and over 25% were wanting to wait for more information, which I think was actually very encouraging, considering this was back in July, a good sort of 6 to 7 months away from actual launch, when not a huge amount of information was available. Okay, so going back to the sort of ecosystem slide, I suppose, of the qualification scheme and how it will look with ITIL practitioner. As I mentioned, this is a work in progress, so when you receive this, it shall hopefully look a lot nicer and be even clearer than it is at the moment. But I think one of the things I just wanted to pull out before going into the diagram is, and this is again a very good selling point for practitioner, is that it's actually been designed by a very talented and experienced team of experts from the industry. So that we've got Lou Hunnebeck, Kevin Burr, Stuart Rance, you've heard her names before, but they show that they come from a wide range of different geographies to represent the ITIL community, hopefully, and they've also come from very different Paul Wilson, very experienced around gamification, an expert is the strength of the team who's developed it. So how does it fit into the existing framework? So what we try to show here is that it's completely complementary. And I'm going to go into some of the details in the next slide. But what we can see in short here is that ITIL Practitioner, it is a requirement to have foundation, which I think everyone will hopefully agree that makes sense. You need to know the language and the processes of ITIL before you can start applying those in a working environment. But ITIL Practitioner is not a requirement for the intermediate modules, nor is it a replacement of any of the intermediate modules. It's completely additive to the existing scheme. So for those who are already on the intermediate track, you don't have to go back and take ITIL Practitioner before you can go on and take another intermediate module. And I think as well, I'll probably call this out a couple of times in the session today, but I do just want to make it very clear that content-wise, there is very minimal overlap with the existing framework, and there is, just to call it out, there is very minimal overlap with the CSI lifecycle module, and I'll come on to that in a little bit more detail later. So here are just some of the key facts around ITIL Practitioner. It's quite a factual slide, and I'm not going to try and dwell on it too much, but I think you'll find some of the information here quite useful and interesting. So as I mentioned, it's completely complementary to the existing framework, and candidates who take the certification and the training will be given the tools and the knowledge and the confidence to start successfully delivering improvement initiatives within their organization. So as I've said, it follows on from ITIL Foundation. It is a prerequisite to have ITIL Foundation to take ITIL Practitioner, and it counts as 3 credits towards your expert level, and that's got a couple of values which I'll come on later around the targeting. But just to reiterate, users must have ITIL Foundation. It focuses on the CSI approach to service management. It teaches users 9 guiding principles and 3 critical competencies, which I'll cover in more detail in the later slides, and also comes with a toolkit, which again I will give more detail on a little bit later. But most importantly, it is a new practical approach to ITIL that enables users to adapt and adopt the framework according or in line with specific business needs of the organization they work for. A couple of other bits of information. So there will be a publication which goes with ITIL Practitioner called ITIL Practitioner Guidance, and this will launch in advance of those exams being available, and you'll be able to pre-order that book very soon. And so that links to my next point, that ITIL Practitioner is an open book exam, which aligns to our Prince 2 Practitioner courses, if you're aware of those. The syllabus, although AXELOS doesn't stipulate the length of training, it's possible to deliver training in 2 days. So not mandated, just repeat that training is not mandated, but AXELOS highly recommends candidates to take training with the course, and also we would expect the vast majority of candidates to take training. I think it would be very difficult to pass the ITIL Practitioner exam without going on a training course, and I think that sort of leads me on to my final point on this slide, is that it is going to be a challenging exam. The feedback we've got from the community is that it shouldn't just be another badge, which we're fully aware of, and so it is going to be a challenging exam and something which will be, I suppose, something that people can be proud to attain. Okay, so now I'm just going to cover off some of the critical elements of the syllabus. So I'm going to go through the CSI approach, the critical competencies, and the 9 guiding principles as well that are covered within ITIL Practitioner. Okay, so the syllabus, the focus is very much on the CSI approach as a way for an individual who takes the course to structure improvement initiatives. So while it has synergies with the lifecycle module CSI, the two are designed to be very complementary and there's very minimal overlap. As well as the CSI approach, it draws on concepts and ideas from the rest of the ITIL core as well, with the key message that ITIL Practitioner provides practical guidance. It's also drawing on the good practices from other methodologies and frameworks. So it's drawing on things from like DevOps, Agile, but I don't want to set the expectation that there is a DevOps chapter or an Agile chapter within Practitioner. There's not. It's just drawing on those concepts, and I hope when I go through the principles and the critical competencies, you'll see where those elements come in. But I think it's very critical just to reference that there isn't a DevOps chapter within ITIL Practitioner or an Agile chapter within ITIL Practitioner. So, as I mentioned, there are 3 critical competencies which are on the slide here, and just to give you a bit of information around what is within each, contained within each. So the first one we've got on the left there is organizational change management, and so this is going to cover things like explaining the role and the impact of a successful improvement, sort of covering certain activities around creating a sense of urgency within an organization, managing stakeholders, managing sponsors. I think probably really important thing is around managing resistance to change. A lot of the case studies that we published on ITIL this year have focused on that and how an organization has managed that resistance to change. And certain tools and techniques as well, which come out in the toolkit, which I'll cover off in a later slide. And also applying the knowledge of organizational change management when planning and implementing improvements, particularly in the context of CSI. The next one on the list is measurements and metrics. So within this, it's going to focus on things like critical success factors, how to properly measure and also not just measure but also share that success within the business, how to analyze those critical success factors and KPIs, which we're also going to feature, and also make sure that they are viewed and analysed in the right context that they're being captured. And it's also going to help define what the current state of the organisation is, things like the goal, the scope, assessment criteria, required outputs, available resources and skills. So one of the guiding principles, which I'll come on to in a moment, is very much that CSI element of start where you are and improve iteratively. And then the final element is around communicate effectively. So covering some of the processes, the principles within communication, how it's a two-way process, sort of timing and frequency of communication. But I think it obviously more around guidance, so there's no sort of single correct method within this. And also explaining the purpose and the value of communication tools and techniques. So things like how to run workshops and meetings with action plans and the like. And they'll also learn relevant communication tools and techniques to help support the improvements that they want to drive. And obviously those 3 critical competencies are all within the context of the CSI approach. Okay, so now to Sorry, I'm just struggling to forward the presentation. Ah, wonderful. So now I'm going to cover off the guiding principles, and there's 9 of them. I think it's important to pull out here, as a marketeer myself, I can't stand the idea of calling out all 9 guiding principles in a presentation. I think once you get past a list of about 4 or 5, you'll start to lose an audience. But I think it's important to cover all 9 here because they're all very valuable, and actually we don't want to give the impression that one guiding principle is more important than another, because they're all incredibly valuable to ITIL Practitioner. So I'm just going to quickly run through all 9 to give you an idea of what they are and how they'll add value to the course. And these guiding principles, they sort of distill some of the core messages of ITIL and ITSM in general to help facilitate improvement at all levels. And these principles guide both organisations and individuals when adopting and adapting ITIL to deliver these improvement initiatives. And I think that the course as well will help to apply these in real-world scenarios. So in terms of the first one, focus on value, and I'm also going to talk about design for experience here as well. So focus on value, so everything the service provider does needs to map value back to the customer and or the business, and it is the customer who determines what is of value, and also design for experience, so retaining the focus on the customer experience. So for me and my background is actually from the customer experience world. It's absolutely critical in terms of measuring and sort of value on a customer's perception. So changing it from a sort of an inside-out approach to an outside-in. So what's driving a better customer experience? I've already touched on slightly earlier on the third one on this slide in terms of starting where you are. So rather than starting from scratch, leverage existing competencies which are built from there. I think one of the big misconceptions around CSI as a life cycle stage is because it's taught last on the syllabus is that it's the last thing you do, whereas in reality pretty much every organisation is delivering a service of some level, and it's a case of improving that level of service rather than ripping it all up and starting from scratch. So the next 3 are work holistically, progress iteratively, and observe directly. And so again, the quite simple principles, but I think incredibly valuable and actually something a lot of organisations struggle to do. So work holistically. All aspects need to work harmoniously together to deliver results, focusing on the bigger picture rather than single individual elements. The next one, progress iteratively, so organise work into manageable sections with clear goalposts. And I think this is one of the moments where you can see something, the influence of Agile coming into the qualification. As I said, there's no chapter on Agile, but it's using the good practice from within Agile to add value to ITIL Practitioner. And then the final one on this slide, observe directly. So again, sounds very simple, but again, something organisations don't always necessarily do particularly well. Base decisions on objective information, what's in front of you, to ensure efficient use of resources. And then the final 3, so work holistically. All aspects need to work harmoniously together to deliver results. Focus on the bigger picture rather than individual single elements. Sorry. Oh, sorry, I've got ahead of myself. So the final 3, keep it simple, collaborate, and be transparent. So the first one I'm going to touch on is be transparent. So be open about ongoing initiatives to gain buy-in from all the stakeholders from whatever direction they are within the organisation. Collaborate, so working together and matching skills to tasks to ensure buy-in, relevance, and long-term success. And then the final one is keeping it simple, which I think is probably something which is shown throughout all of these guiding principles. So eliminating processes, services, metrics, etc. You know, if someone's if you send through a huge report with lots of different metrics and measurements on, is that something which someone's actually digesting, or is it just a tick box exercise? Is someone getting value from receiving that? So really focus efforts on only those things that reap benefits. Okay, so the next part of the session today, I'm going to focus a little bit around the value prop, the benefits, and also around the different target audiences for ITIL Practitioner. So I know there were a number of questions around this, so hopefully I'm going to cover those off in this section. So one of the sort of concepts we've got from our campaign that we'll be launching for Practitioner is around introducing the practitioners with the axe nicely emboldened in Practitioner. So Practitioner is aimed at anyone working within IT service management. Obviously, that's quite a sort of wide goal, and I wouldn't necessarily expect everyone within the organisation to be taking ITIL Practitioner. But what it will do is demonstrate a commitment both to personal and organisational development at any level. So from an individual level, it's demonstrating your commitment to making a difference in your organisation, having the tools and the abilities and the knowledge to start making improvements. And from an organisation down, it's sort of empowering your employees, and I'll come on to those benefits in a little bit later. But I think we've really got three main target audiences for ITIL Practitioner. So the first one is those who don't currently hold an ITIL Practitioner, sorry, an ITIL certification, but are one of those hundreds of thousands of people who take an ITIL Foundation course every year. And the challenge here is selling ITIL Foundation and Practitioner as one. They go hand in hand, and I hope you've sort of seen that with the content I've already presented today, where Foundation is giving you the what and the why, and that basic language and knowledge in IT service management, and ITIL Practitioner is then giving you the skills, the techniques, the knowledge to then put that into practice in your organisation. And in this way, individuals will be ready to hit the ground running when they return to the workplace. The next audience is those who have taken Foundation, but in that sort of 85% who I mentioned earlier, who haven't gone on and taken an intermediate certification. One of the questions I get is that when speaking to our partners and various people within the industry is, do you think that it's going to have a negative impact on intermediate modules? In the short term, there is obviously potential for that to happen, but I honestly actually think that Practitioner can act as a springboard for those who haven't gone on past Foundation yet to actually start looking at those intermediate modules. It's a clearer guidance now in terms of once you've taken Foundation, where to go next. Practitioner is the obvious next step. Obviously, you don't have to go straight there, but I think this is a really important target audience, and there's a huge number of practitioners out there who would gain a lot of value from taking ITIL Practitioner. We're not saying that they're not experienced, they're not doing really good work in their jobs, but I think this is something which can add an awful lot of value to their role in the workplace, and also to their CV if we're being sort of quite honest and blunt about it. The third audience is those who are currently taking their intermediate modules. So they've already taken that step on to take the intermediate modules. They're invested in the ITIL lifecycle, and And I think if the conversation is right, they can be very easily persuaded to take ITIL Practitioner. I think the first big element is that it's 3 credits, so it's the same as some of the intermediate modules in terms of value towards expert. And as I said, there's also very minimal overlap with the existing intermediate modules. So it's not like they'll be going back over existing contents that they've already covered. I think it potentially might be a slightly harder sell, and do take that on board, but I do think there's a lot of value that they could take as well from taking the ITIL Practitioner qualification. So I hope that's given a little bit more information around the different audiences that AXELOS sees for ITIL Practitioner, and obviously something that I think the marketing and sales teams within our training partners can sort of start breaking out and segmenting and creating messaging for each of those groups. Okay, so now I'm just going to talk a little bit about the benefits and also talk about the toolkit, which I'm yet to cover. The toolkit is something which is going to help drive all those things that you see on the slide there, and it's going to be part of the publication. It's something that practitioners can take away with them after the course, and it's going to include a lot of things like templates, worksheets, and a lot of references to further reading. So just to give you a bit of a flavour of some of the items on that, there's a CSI register, an orientation worksheet, KPI balance checklist, attention metrics, business case templates, meeting notes templates, and there's really lots of great content in there which they'll be able to use and take back into their business to start making that difference. So it's not that they go away for 2 days at a training course and then forget everything when they go back into the office. They've got the tools and the knowledge and hopefully the confidence to start making a difference. And we understand that ITIL Practitioner isn't a one-size-fits-all approach, and I think where this toolkit can help start sort of giving them some of the tools to help adopt, but also adapt ITIL in their organisation. So I wanted to, I said I'd talk a little bit about some of the benefits as well, and I think it sounds, to some it probably sounds a little bit sort of marketing spiel, but I do think there's huge value to having individuals feel empowered, confident, and more capable to make a difference in their organisation. A couple of years ago, a Gallup poll, and I apologise if you're not based in the US for this, and it will vary by region, but this Gallup poll said that 70% of US employees were either actively disengaged or not engaged, which is actually quite damning. And what was the reason for this was that individuals either weren't having an impact on their business or they weren't aware of the impact they were having, and which ties in incredibly well to practitioner and actually giving individuals the ability to make those improvements to the service that's being offered, but before organisations start to get nervous, aligned to the organisation's objectives and goals, which is very important. And hopefully this will all result in a happier customer at the end, and obviously all of the harder metrics behind that, increased revenue, customers loyalty increases, and sort of bigger advocates of the brand. Okay, so sort of what is within the qualification. This is sort of related Practitioner. But for those of you who don't know, AXELOS recently, and this ties very closely to ITIL Practitioner. So as I've said, practitioners, all about helping individuals develop their skills, acquiring the latest knowledge and applying those behaviours in the workplace so that individuals progress as a professional. So a member of professional development program they'll gain recognition through a digital badge, an ITIL digital badge, and this can be shared through online platforms and demonstrates that commitment by an individual to stay up to date and aware of all the best practice that exists in the marketplace. I think for any member of this program, ITIL Practitioner is an incredibly valuable thing to have, as it gains you 15 points towards your 20 points needed for the year, which is a big sell for anyone on the call who will be looking to sell practitioner if they are a member of the AXELOS Professional Development Program. Okay, so I'm just going to finish up today's session by sharing some of the marketing tools and plans that AXELOS has in place, which hopefully the tools you'll use, and the plans are more just of an awareness piece, so that you know what's coming. So the first bit I wanted to share was around the toolkit. So this toolkit, we've released very similar ones for Prince2 Agile, for Resilia, and for ITIL, the core product. I shouldn't say core product, sorry, existing portfolio. So this is going to be released in two elements. The first, which I think is likely to be released at the end of next week, which will include a marketing brochure, of which a mock-up of the front cover can be seen on the lead of it. We also will include a sales presentation, which is the majority of what you've seen today, and some of the slides and the notes are being tweaked. But that again, use the diagrams, use elements from that, however you see value to be gained from it. We also have a infographic which sort of tells the story of ITIL Practitioner, why it was developed, what's the benefit, who's it for, a lot of the items that I've covered today. And we're also going to include the publicly available FAQ document. So that is something which can be forwarded to any of your customers to give them all of the latest information on ITIL Practitioner. And then finally, potentially one of the most valuable items is a sales fact sheet. So this is for use with your sales teams on the phones, calling customers, or going to meetings or being at events, and it gives the key messages, the key value prop, some of the key information, the different messages for the different target audiences, and also covers a Q&A as well. So if there are any questions or objections that people might handle, some of the more factual elements, we've pulled that out into it's just a two-sided A4 document, or sheet, I should say. Later in the year, we'll also then release a second element to the toolkit, and this is more of the sort of direct marketing content that can be used. So within that, we've got email templates, digital banner ads, print ads, which will take the same sort of theme that you can see on the right-hand side here. Again, I don't mind how you use them, but they are there and they are available. So if you would like to take advantage of those, please do. And then finally, as well, we will have a promotional animated video, which will be no more than 2 minutes long, and will include, again, it will most likely be the infographic in video format, and I'd encourage embed it in your site, to help promote Practitioner. We did a very similar one for the launch of Prince2 Agile this year, and it was very well received. And finally, this is just my last slide. Just a very sort of brief overview of a sort of top-level marketing plan that we've got together. So I think some of the key elements to pull out here is that we will be sponsoring both Fusion and ITSMF UK. I'll be attending both events, and we will have booths at both events. So if you are in attendance for either of those, I would encourage you to come over, say hello. We've got some really great collateral on those booths. The guiding principles, the chapter that focuses on the guiding principles will actually be available in a little pocketbook to take away, which is print only, and at the moment likely only available at those two events. We'll also be investing in sort of digital campaigns and various sort of solus campaigns, solus email campaigns, and digital ads on various sort of related sites, recruitment sites, industry sites as well. And we'll be doing more PR and messaging around that. So if you do follow AXELOS, I would encourage you to keep an eye out for all of that and all the latest content that's coming up. So thank you very much for joining today's session. I hope I've answered some of the questions that you had and that you found it valuable. And I think now we're going to open it out to questions.
I'll be very brief, but I think it's relevant information for the audience. Get started. Now, for the audience here, I believe that most of you may have already received a mail last week from us, which explained about the pricing for ITIL Practitioner courseware. And this is really, we think that will help you to start planning to run this course next year. And based on a strategic partnership with AXELOS, so we decided to support the adoption of ITIL Practitioner, and therefore we're offering that at very attractive price. Now, there are three pricing here on the screen. There is a link to a site where actually you can go in and check the price for your specific country. So we'll also send you that link as a follow-up to this webinar. Another important information for you, the audience, is we'll be running train-the-trainer webinars when it is ready. So you can pre-register. We don't have dates yet, but you can pre-register showing your interest in these TTT webinars. And the idea is to enable your trainers to be, among the first to adopt these new and emerging certifications. And so please, we also send you the link to the site where you can pre-register. And the participants will actually receive a complimentary instructor package along with the participation in this webinar. And as explained to you at the beginning, so we provide training materials and value-added services to training providers. And as partner, you have choices how to work with us, whether you only use our courseware, or if you don't have trainers, you can source trainers from us. And also with the full service, with our exam services, courseware, and so forth. And if you're not an ITpreneurs partner yet, you can easily become one. And when we close the webinar, we'll also have a survey, and you can identify if you would like us to get in touch with you. And we want to emphasize that we are providing training materials and services to training providers. So our business model is business to partners. We do not compete with our partners. And with that, I think we can get into some of the questions. So Tom.
Hello.
So for the audience, because some of you already submit some questions, so I'm going to go through that first, and then we'll follow by some of the questions you actually submit during this webinar. Sure. First question, do you have any insights to anticipated RFP questions or requirements that will start to pop up from businesses in relation to ITIL Practitioner?
Yeah. I think this was a really interesting question, and I think for me one of the things you'll probably see is, or I would hope that you would see, is around the practical element of the training. So we're recommending that partners, or encouraging partners who are developing their training, that it's a very interactive session, and that there's obviously there will need to be a sort of a slide element to it, an information sharing element to it. But I think it would be very interesting to see or see people asking requirements that the training is very interactive. So I think that would probably be what I would at least hope, I think, in terms of the sort of RFP questions or requirements that you'll get, in addition to sort of the more standard ones that you would expect to receive.
Okay. Another question. Can you explain the relation between ITSMF and AXELOS going forward?
Sure. Yeah. So as I said, this is a very timely question. So we recently announced a partnership between ITSMF and AXELOS. So you can. I don't want to cover the whole announcement there on the call now, but yes, we are working in partnership. We're working closely in partnership, and you can find the press release detailing all of that, both on AXELOS's news site and also ITSMF's. And there will also be an announcement taking place at Fusion, and obviously we will be at Fusion and ITSMF UK to discuss that with anyone who would like to find out more.
Okay, thank you. Then there's a question regarding trainer requirements for ITIL Practitioner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so in terms of the trainer requirements, there are a couple. So the first is to have a minimum of 3 years practical experience in IT service management, hold the ITIL Practitioner certification, have a minimum 10 days experience delivering classroom-based training, preferably ITIL ones, but it's not stipulated. Be registered under a specified training partner. I think this is probably the sort of more interesting way. Hold either the ITIL expert or hold credits towards ITIL. So that would be 2 from for the course, and then 7 additional credits from the other intermediate modules. What we are also stipulating is that trainers must hold should hold the ITIL Intermediate CSI certification, but we are, for those who do not hold it, we will be giving them a 12-month grace period up until the end of December 2016 to obtain that qualification. So although so effectively next year you don't require it, but from January 2017 onwards it will be a requirement. We would recommend that, or strongly recommend that trainers do hold the ITIL expert qualification, but it's not mandatory to deliver that training.
Okay, thank you. Then there is a question about syllabus. Can we have access to what syllabus looks like? So one of the participants asked.
Okay, so I think this is yes, but there's certain stages that need to go through to obtain this. So I think that's probably something best handled offline. So I think if anyone, I think that's probably something that we can follow up directly with people afterwards.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thanks. Then there's a question for me, actually, from one participant. Will entrepreneurs be offering this by e-learning? Yes. So initially, we will have the classroom materials available, and later on also e-learning available. And then there's a question for you, Tom. What pain points are we addressing from the participant's perspective for ITIL Practitioner?
Received a lot of on it, but not actually know where to start. So the aim of Practitioner is to give those candidates the knowledge, the tools and like the toolkit and the techniques, and also something I mentioned as well earlier around the confidence to start adopting and sort of driving continued improvements, whatever level of the organisation they are, and making sure that that's aligned to the business. I think that's one of them. I think as well we've had a lot of feedback around the fact that actually people are overwhelmed by the intermediate, where to go next, and there are a lot of choices, and not every training provider even provides an intermediate course. So I think we see with this, it's although it's adding in a certification, it's actually simplifying that path for individuals to go on and take sort of further learning and gaining further value from the ITIL certification scheme. I think as well, it's sort of going back to those original slides that I showed around why we developed this, and those were some of the key pain points that we had from the industry. I think I know the question was about individuals as well, but I think something that we're hearing from organisations is around the ability for individuals to make a difference when they come off the training back into their organisation, and I think that's something that Practitioner is going to really help organisations and individuals hand in hand, and it's something we definitely hope they'll do.
Okay. On that note, looking at the time, I would like to thank you, Tom, for this very interesting session. Thanks for spending your time, bringing us very valuable information to work on for our sales and marketing efforts for ITIL Practitioner. And for the audience, appreciate your presence today. I hope this has been a useful session for you. So we welcome your feedback and love what you thought of today's webinar before you go. So once we end the webinar, there will be a very quick survey for you to fill out. The recording of this session will be shared with the participants, as mentioned, and also the slides. So thank again to everyone for coming today, and we look forward to seeing you at other sales and marketing related webinars, which we will be hosting in the coming weeks. Have a very nice day. Thank you.